So
Thank you,
welcome.
Dr. Chandrasekharan. The distinguished speakers in the panel, distinguished industry experts in the auditorium, a very good afternoon to you all. Well, the tone has been already set by Dr. Chandrasekharan when he said, referred to the passion of exploration is in opening new plays and new basins. And that has been the story, particularly for ONGC, NOCs like ONGC, Oil India, I'm sure, with other operators in this country. We have been exploring for the last 6 to 7 decades, and there has been relentless efforts of pursuing the leads in frontier areas. That has given us the recent successes. So today, my talk, I will restrict to the on-land frontier basins of the country. So when you talk about the on-land frontier basins, we are basically talking about nearly 16 basins, which are mostly the category 3 and 2. And these basins, if you look at the aerial extent, it covers around 1.3 million square kilometers, almost 40% of the total area of 3.36 million square kilometers that we have in the country. And in the on-land sector as a whole, this covers around 81% of the total area span of 1.63 million square kilometers. Now, these basins exploring these basins have always been very challenging because of many reasons. First of all, these are areas which are logistically difficult, span over a huge geographical extent. The data we have as of now is rather scanty to meager. So there are a lot of gaps in the knowledge. And since most of these basins are either in the initial stage of exploration or very little exploration has been done in terms of having some regional geological understanding, gravity, magnetics, and deep seismic profiles, that is the basis with which we have built up the understanding of these basins. And of course, they have their own challenges in terms of their complex geological setups, tectonic setups. Most of these plays which are chasing in these frontier areas are in the deeper domains. They have heterogeneities as well as tightness, which calls for a lot of input of fit-to-purpose energy, this technology to unravel these energies in these basins. Now, having said that about all these challenges, the opportunities are also immense. What we are looking on is around an energy resource of around 2 billion tons oil equivalent in these basins. And this figure of 2 billion ton oil equivalent is based on our present-day understanding, based on our present-day data that we have. And as this famous saying goes, that today's producers were yesterday's frontiers. So there has been, as you have seen in the entire process of resource reassessments over the years, we have seen that with more and more data, more understanding, knowledge is built up, these resource volumes have kept on increasing. And this is the story, same story is going to be repeated for the frontier basins as well. Now, the major enablers, what are the major enablers to achieve this? First of all, is technology. Because right from imaging these plays, drilling them, taking production from them to stimulation, all these things require specific technologies. And whatever knowledge base we have, based on that regional basin scale modeling, and then global analogs will always help us for prioritizing these plays in these basins. Now, briefly, I will go through the ONGC's efforts in the last 7 decades. This is a snapshot of what we have achieved. This will show that right from the early stage, if we can divide the entire span into major 5 phases, we see right from 1956, when we started drilling the Jwalamukhi, there has been continuous efforts of knowledge building, data gathering, and with that, over a period of 60 to 70 years of relentless exploration and perseverance, we have found major discoveries in Vindhyan Basin and Bengal Basins, and that has given us more impetus to work for in these category 2 and 3 basins. Now, I will touch upon some of the basins. Because the time is not, considering the time limitations, I will not go into the details of these things. But just to give a snapshot of the ideas, what are the opportunities available in these frontier basins, I will pick up a few basins. I'll start with Vindhyans. Vindhyans has a prognosticated resource base of more than 630 million tons of oil equivalent. Our exploration endeavor started right back 1960s. And as happens in all exploration methodologies, the first targets were the surface anticlines, the exposed structures, and the bigger structures, where we met mixed successes. Then gradually, with more data, understanding, and more knowledge build-up, we have deliberately focused into stratigraphic plays. And that gave us the first success in NOTA. That was way back in 2012. With that success, with additional seismic data, 3D seismics, 3D attribute studies based on DFN models, Antrax, and other data, gradually we have gone into a first commercial hydrocarbon discovery in the Hatta area. That is the biggest breakthrough that we have achieved in Vindhyan basins. And now we are going forward with that, with drilling of inclined wells based on critically stressed fracture orientations, drilling of pad wells from the single clusters to have maximum gas accumulation at the surface. And we have enormous potential that have been mapped in this area where we're going aggressively for the future. Coming to the Bengal Basin, this also is a basin where we have got recent success. If you see that the onland part of the basin has an aerial extent of around more than 40,000 square kilometers. And the exploration in this basin has been always challenging because the number of factors are there. Absence of major structural traps. The reservoirs that we have encountered are rather very thin and subseismic and very difficult to map. And almost 70 wells have been drilled over a period of last 70 years. And after that, we got the first success in Ashoknagar. That speaks about that perseverance, that continuing with the efforts of knowledge building and the understanding of this basin. So right now, the major focus in these basins are mostly the plays, in the Miocene plays, in these channel levee complexes in the southern part of the basin. We have the Eocene plays near the hinge zone, which is having a lot of potential that we are going to chase. And the most important area that we are looking for is the area around the Eocene hinge zone, where the deeper plays, particularly the Eocene and the prograding packs of the Paleocene, are our next challenging targets. Ganga Punjab is an area where ONGC has been exploring for a large period of time. It's a large, vast tract of around more than 3 lakh square kilometers that we have partially and sporadically explored. And we have active petroleum systems in this, both in the Proterozoic as well as tertiaries, primarily Proterozoic. And based on the successes that we have got in the initial phases, we have drilled mostly around structural traps in around 20 odd wells. And there were sporadic hydrocarbon shows, hydrocarbon indications that has enthused us to go in more detail with the new data. And with the interpretation of the new NSP data, now the focus of exploration is now gradually changing from the highs to the areas which are particularly the wedge outs, the structural traps within the lows, and the unconformity related traps. Recently, ONGC has acquired a few acreages in the Ganga, and we are going ahead with drilling of the additional wells that will give us more data in this area. Another area is the Pranhita Godavari graben. This has been partially explored by ONGC in past. This has a resource base of around 95 billion tons of oil equivalent. This is a typical intracratonic rift basin. And basin has been divided into 4 major intrabasinal lows. Particularly the southernmost part, the area has been explored with a few wells and scanty seismic data. But the entire basin has more or less has been mapped based on the gravity magnetic, DSS profiles, and geological mappings. And some of this area, particularly the central Godavari graben, has come out an area where more than 6 kilometer thickness of sedimentary sequences have been envisaged. And this area definitely have additional advantages in the form of matured source rock, similar to the Krishna Godavari in the vicinity. So a few more parametric wells and acquisition of 3D data in this area will throw more light on the prospectivity of this basin. Now, Kadapa is a basin that we have focused in after the success in Vindhyans. This is a similar basin, it's a Proterozoic basin. And this also has an aerial extent of around 40,000 square kilometers with prominent lows in the area where more than 10 kilometers of sediment thickness is anticipated. The petroleum system primarily is Proterozoic, similar to the Vindhyans. And as we have seen in the Vindhyans, the algal stromatolitic limestones as well as the organic rich shales are the major source rocks. This also is envisaged in this basin. ONGC is going ahead drilling the first well in the Cuddaf basin very shortly, and this will also give us a more additional data to look into. Now coming to the realms of the Himalayas, the idea of this presentation is to just showcase you the various opportunities across the geological provinces and geological setups available in the frontier basins. Spiti Zanskar is a Tibetan Himalayan area. It is challenging in the terms that the climatic conditions are rather harsh here. Most of the area remains glaciated over a period of time, hardly any window of around 5 to 6 months to operate in these areas. But having said that, there are enormous opportunities available here, particularly in the area which is away from the Indus-Ucha zone. That is, we are talking about not the leading edge of the plate, but the area away from the Indus-Ucha zone, where a huge thickness of sediments from Proterozoic to Eocene are available. And coupled with that, this area is less disturbed as compared to the lesser Himalayas, which areas that we have explored earlier. So there is a potential of huge opportunities here. Of course, because of the difficulties in logistics, the acquisition of seismic data in this area is rather challenging. So what we can look at this area is the technologies like the airborne gravity service, the airborne geochemical service, passive seismic, so that we can preliminarily identify the areas of interest so that we can focus our exploratory inputs on those particular areas. Next is the Narmada Basin. This also is an area which had been under exploration recently, based on the successes in the similar Mesozoic sequences in the Kutch. This area has a huge thickness of around 2.5 square kilometer, 3.5 kilometer of sedimentary thickness, envisaged primarily based on the DSS and gravity magnetic profiles, and this GSS profiles. ONGC is going to drill very shortly one well in Narmada Basin. This is another basin which has opportunities. Of course, this has not been covered by seismics extensively. A few seismics has been shot, and based on that, we are drilling a first well. Based on the success of this well, further exploratory inputs, and this is an area which is most promising in terms of the ONGC's present exploration acreages. Similarly, Deccan Sidicalized, this of course is an initial stage of exploration. This is a large area of nearly 2.7 lakh square kilometers. Here again, most of the studies have been carried out by these geophysical studies by NGRI and DGH. A number of gravels have been identified where thickness of more than 4 kilometers are envisaged in these areas. Addition to that, we have the surface geochemical anomalies indicating an active petroleum system existing in these basins. And of course, the major challenge is the imaging of the Mesozoic sequence below the trap. So further knowledge building in these areas is in progress before going actively in exploration in this part of the basin. Now coming to the, as I already I've spoken in the initial part of my presentation, that these are challenging areas, and the challenging areas demand technologies, suitable technologies. The two major areas that we really look at is the quick reconnaissance. Before expending large exploratory inputs in terms of seismics and drilling, a quick reconnaissance in terms of airborne gravity surveys, gradiometries, or airborne geochemical surveys. These are the major tools that are going to help us in this. And of course, we have attempted these in parts of thrust fold belts in Assam-Arakan fold belt with a lot of success. We could define the structures much accurately with available data. Then, of course, the LFPS and passive seismics that have been used in mature basins, in exploration basins like Cambe, that has given us sort of direct evidence of hydrocarbon presence in the subsurface. And for the Mesozoic sequences, for better imaging, the processing technologies, advanced seismic processing in terms of FWI and beam migration have been very effective in Kutch in identifying the layers within the Mesozoic below the traps. And the same approach may be utilized in areas like Narmada for better understanding of the Mesozoics. And since many of these plays that we are looking at in these frontier areas are fracture plays, so in this area, the special processing of ES360 for the understanding of the fracture corridors will also give a lot of new understanding and new light in these basins. So to conclude my presentation, I would just reiterate my point that for frontier exploration, it is perseverance. And the perseverance has paid for for ONGC, as you have seen in the areas like Vindhyan and Bengal. So this slide shows two photographs. The first photograph on the left is the well head at the well Jwalamukhi 1. That was the first well drilled by ONGC way back in 1957. And the second well shows the success that we got in Hatta in March 2019. So in between these two pictures, this entire period has been an area of knowledge building, perseverance, and building the confidence to achieve. And of course, there are miles to go. So with that, I conclude my presentation, and thank you all for your patient listening. Thank you.